Key changes to material and resources include an additional prerequisite for construction management plans. So this was a credit formally, and now we're seeing that you do not receive any points for it. It is now just an expectation for all LEED buildings to achieve a construction management plan that reduces the waste for demo and construction going to a landfill. So looking for alternative uses, going back to manufacturers, donations, or just recycling. Reusing on site also has synergy with regional materials. Building life cycle impact reduction is now introduced and very important in transforming the market. We'll look at that in a future slide. Material disclosure and optimization. This is really trying to fuel more transparency in manufacturers. Very important for the manufacturers to have to be accountable, and an expectation to disclose that information helps to drive that transparency and to be more accountable of what is actually going in the materials that are in our buildings. Material ingredient reporting, also adding on to that, and this is where we're really starting to see, in conjunction with avoidance of chemicals of concern, a correlation to the living building challenge and the criteria that comes with the living future to really look on a chemical component level of what's going in to our products and materials. So we're really looking at health issues, environmental issues that have a long-term impact on our buildings. Key material and resource changes include extended producer responsibility, closed loop product recycling program for the purchased product. Once again, this is giving credit to manufacturers that are really looking holistically on how they're impacting the environment in our society and economy as a whole. Building on that, supporting local economy is also emphasized. So products that are manufactured and purchased within the core base statistical area. This is a new basis for evaluation that the USGBC is bringing into consideration in this version 4 and committees are discussing. The core-based statistical area is defined by the U.S. Office of Management and Budget. And once again, that's why the LEED rating system, I believe, has so much credibility, is that it does use existing national standards that are widely accepted and just raises the bar on those. Bio-based materials are also emphasized. So that's materials that have been derived from organic carbon, not fossil sources, and harvested in a legal manner. So once again, looking at that social equity component. We see that in emphasis for restoring blighted buildings as well. So sustainability and equity are beginning to link together. There's also an emphasis on historic preservation. The image on right is of the U.S. Customs House in Portland, Oregon. It's been empty for many years, and it's the only Renaissance building in Oregon. And it's now being looked at as a community hub and truly restoring that. It's adjacent to the Pearl, which was previously a brownfield and would bring great vitality to the community by being preserved and renewed in a sustainable way. Once again, looking at that triple bottom line. So building reuse has expanded to include life cycle analysis. This was very important because new construction really should take into consideration the reuse of materials as well, beyond just the previous material reuse credits. So here, with life cycle analysis, we're looking at raw material extraction, manufacturing and production, how it's transported to the site and throughout the process, utilization and reuse. So, well, how efficient is it? How expensive is it to maintain? How many resources does it take to maintain? Does it need to be cleaned, recoated? What are those requirements during the utilization period? Does it require a lot of energy or resources for upkeep? So looking at the full life cycle costs and analysis of our products and systems, all the way through disposal. Is it the end of the product's life, or is it cradle to cradle, and can it be renewed into another product or system? So there's also an expansion of building reuse credit to include new construction and comparing the structure and enclosure in at least 3 different impact categories, building on this life cycle assessment. This must include global warming potential in terms of carbon footprint, but could include things like depletion of stratospheric ozone layer or acidification of land and water sources as 2 more examples. Material and resources category also changed in respect to responsible sourcing of raw materials. So now we're not just looking at regional materials, but really expanding on how they are sourced, in this case also mined or quarried. That includes products such as concrete, glass, gypsum board, masonry, virgin metals, and stone. These are industries that have been around a long time and now are being pushed to really look at what is the impact from the point of extraction when they're being mined or quarried. Extracted materials would be plastics and minerals, bio-based, agrofiber, bamboo, and wood as examples. So the proposed requirement as of this date for version 4 is a minimum of 10% by cost. Responsible sourcing of raw materials had an effect on the wood certification criteria. This has been a hot topic in version 4. Previously, only FSC certified, so the Forest Stewardship Council, was counted as certified wood. Now, currently, there's language that says added USGBC approved equivalent can be considered. So this is really starting to expand the industry. The inclusion of mined and extracted materials applying to concrete, steel, and other materials is intended to spark more stringent certification in these industries. And if you've ever tried to collect data on the steel companies' extraction and manufacturing, it can be quite difficult. So this will really help to transform the market, as we've seen the LEED rating system do for over a decade now. Bio-based materials without certification are also recognized. Avoidance of chemicals of concern in building references California's Proposition 65. So currently, the credits proposed to require 20% of all building products by cost must comply with that standard. So the intent is to increase the use of products and materials that disclose chemical ingredient data and reduce the concentrations of chemical contaminants that can damage air quality, human health, productivity, and the environment. So once again, transparency is key in transforming the market and building cleaner products for the future. Regional materials is not as straightforward as it was in LEED 2009. There's a shift away from the simple 500-mile radius. Used to be able to just Google as a crow flies, 500-mile radius, but it wasn't applicable for all areas in the same way. So they're starting to consider that. And they're using a more targeted metric from the core-based statistical area, defined by the U.S. Census Bureau. And the definition, according to the consensus, of this concept is a metropolitan or micropolitan statistical area containing a substantial population nucleus together with adjacent communities having a high degree of economic and social integration with that core. So I'm sure we'll see further developments into this topic. Here's an example of a software we created at EcoReal of just tracking and disclosing information. And the USGBC and GBCI are really looking for tools to help transform the market and help teams utilize this new rating system adjustment version 4 that is going to be more stringent and is going to require more team integration, more interaction with the manufacturers early on, and it's going to take tools and collaboration to reach these new, very important goals that are being presented in the LEED rating systems version 4. So I encourage you to all think about building these tools and collaborating to problem solve how we can make it easier for the green building industry to continue to grow as needed. In terms of materials, just looking at the future, biomimicry is always something to keep your eye on. We're learning from nature all the time, and it's really about looking at rejuvenating our natural processes and our ecosystem and learning from it. The closed loop, sustainable fashion in which nature works is how we need to start looking at our own industries and how we build, construct, and design our sites and buildings and products. So in this case, this is just a paint that emulates the wings of a butterfly, who somehow always have a bright, vibrant color to their wings without being to lick them clean or do any cleaning process that some other species can do. So it's actually these little molecules on their wings that help them to shed any dirt. And so this is a paint that actually emulates that nanostructure. Key changes to indoor environmental quality include enhanced indoor air quality strategies. There's an interior lighting credit, including a quality option. So not just looking at levels and energy reduction, but also the quality. Low emitting materials. This is a very important one that I've seen as a hurdle before on projects. And that's that low emitting materials before in 2009 were really all or nothing. So this is a proposal to include a sliding scale for different types of interior finishes and coatings. And it's referring to California Department of Public Health standard method. So manufacturers are going to be asked to comply with that standard, and they must also state the range of VOCs over 14 days. Furniture is also proposed to be included. And for healthcare, there's an additional requirement for bat insulation to not have any additional formaldehyde of certain types. Acoustical performance was something we saw in LEED 2009 for schools, but now that's expanding to other building types as a credit opportunity. And for daylighting, there are many more options for analysis, including simulating spatial daylight autonomy. Pictures here are once again from that case study in Oregon. It's Oregon State University's Kelly Engineering Center. There's great daylighting coming in to this atrium where students hang out, socialize, do homework, and I think daylighting is part of what played into that. And it took a lot of pre-planning in terms of orientation, taking advantage of the site conditions, and then you can see how the light shelves and white surfaces, reflective surfaces within the interior help to bounce light further and deeper into that space. Multi-stories, relatively narrow, is quite a feat and shows what you can do with integrated design. Currently, you can look to pilot credits for possible innovation points, and it kind of shows you possibilities of where the rating system is heading. So we see pilot credits for life cycle assessment. That is something we saw in version 4. PBT source reduction, medical and process equipment efficiency, chemical avoidance, certified products, bird collision deterrence, exterior noise control. These are all pilot credits that you can see influencing some of the credit changes that we discussed in this webinar. The innovation credit for LEEDap has also had the bar raised with the requirement that you need to have a lead AP with a specialty in the rating system that's being pursued. So more emphasis on that lead AP plus status and being specialized in that rating system. Another change being proposed in version 4, speaking of more tools and resources being developed, are their new lead interpretations. This is building off the current credit interpretation request CIR process. They're going to be precedent setting and be on a searchable database so we can continue to learn from other projects. So here's the breakdown of how it interrelates with the CIR process. You always need to start within the CIR process on Lead Online. You submit the credit interpretation request when you have an inquiry. Team receives a credit interpretation ruling within 3 to 4 weeks. And they have an option to opt into the lead interpretation process. Then, rather than the project reviewers reviewing the inquiry, it goes to a USGBC staff where they evaluate applicability. If it's too project specific, it's rejected and does not go further into that process and stays within the CIR status. But if it is determined to be precedent setting for multiple projects, then it moves on to a committee that provides a lead interpretation within 3 to 6 months. So it's a longer, more in-depth process to keep building on the lead rating system because it's a continuing evolving tool and framework to work within. Once you get the lead interpretation, is added to that lead interpretations database where projects will be able to access those lead interpretations to gain information, and they're actually precedent setting to the point where you must meet all previous lead interpretations up to the point of when you register your lead project. Lead interpretations versus project CIRs. The difference is lead interpretations are precedent setting. They're universal answers that refer to all projects. As mentioned, all teams are required to adhere to interpretations posted before the registration date, which is an important concept to understand since it'll be a requirement. They're published online, so once again, this is a resource that's being added. And they're subject to consensus-based review, as much of the lead process is. So it's reviewed by USGBC member-selected volunteer committees. And CRRs are created by GBCI certified review team. So the lead rating systems are constantly evolving. The Living Future is an example of that evolution created by Northwest Cascadia chapter of the USGBC. And as you can see, many of the concepts are being intertwined with where the latest versions of LEED are now heading. Version 4 is definitely starting to push the market and move us in this direction of a living future, which is restorative for both our environment and our communities. Once again, this is based on LEED version 4, the 4th draft review comment period as of June 2012. It is still evolving, scheduled to be released in June 2013. So keep posted for more updates. Please check the usgbc.org website and gbci.org as well for many resources and to keep up to date. Thank you for listening in, and feel free to contact me, Summer Gorder, EcoReal Solutions, for any further information.